Okay, is this the most confusing pile of equipment you've ever seen? Just wondering. Right, now, Claire's Crafty Corner. Claire asked me if I would revisit this. This was the little project where we did the water drop effect, the raindrop effect from T&, we did that in just a coaster mould, but I put bigger blobs and I put fish in them, and Claire immediately said, oh, you need to do a whole pond like that. So that inspired this idea. I'm going to do 2 ponds. I'm going to do one using that technique and one using the technique that I normally use for making ponds for model railways. So we can have the 2 running side by side. So what I've got here is my, this is new, this is the big version of the ultraviolet curing lamp from Let's Resin. Very affordable, it's just literally arrived in the last couple of hours. As you know, I've got several lamps on the go. I thought we'd give this one a try because I am going to be curing a much bigger area. Here's its cable, and it's a USB connection, so I have got a mobile phone charger at hand to run that when we get to that stage. The other things I've got obviously is the high viscosity ultraviolet curing resin from J Diction. You can not use a normal viscosity one, but I find this stays domed up higher because it's more viscous, so I find it easier for this technique. I've got a couple of nice big wibbly wobbly edged coaster moulds. So is they're placemats or something? I don't know what they are. I use them for ponds. And the other thing I've got is this mould, which you may or may not have seen before. If you've done model railways, you will have done, or any other model landscaping. It's from Woodland Scenics, and this is the Embankment C1233. They've got a lot of different moulds, but it is for making mountains and things with. This one particular one is for embankments, which is why they're long and straight, and then there's some other fancy shape bits. So for the one that I'm going to be doing that's more like my normal model railway scenery, this is how I will be using making the rocks, and for that I have some plaster at the ready. So that's why we've got 2 moulds here. Now what I'm going to do is keep them side by side on the worktop here so that you can see the progress, although obviously I'm going to have a bit of fun trying to keep the 2 lots of materials apart because they're going to be very different. They'll cross over when I get to a certain point. First thing I'm going to do, and I'll use this mould just to stand this in for now, is try to get this little chap level. Sometimes stand them in pots of sand to get them level. That's going to be near enough for what we're doing today, and I'll get some plaster into there. And I'm also going to put all the little fishes that I've got at the ready, contemplating putting a big one in this. Going to push those neatly into a little pile so they're safely out of the way. There they are. I don't know if they're in shot. Little fishes. People after the last video were asking me where I got the little fish from. I do make them, I hand paint them. They are the proper colours of koi carp. That's a shower, for example. And so yeah, we've even got a little ghost koi in this pile, which is a popular one with Brits. They are in my eBay shop at the moment. I haven't moved them over to my actual online store as yet, but I will at some point. Anyway, there's the little fishes. So yes, I'll get this plaster in first, and then we'll come back and we'll do the raindrop effect in this one and get the fish into that and cured up. At some point, this will overtake this, because this is a much longer process. There's a lot more different materials involved, and I won't be using ultraviolet curing resin in all likelihood either. So this one will take a little bit longer. This one will be finished quite quickly. So there we go. I'll get the plaster mixed up. Right, back with the plaster mixed up. I try to get it kind of like a cream effect. This might be slightly too runny, but it's near enough. The plaster that I'm using is called Herculite. Again, I'll put you the link for that. You could use Jessamine. I suppose you could try doing it with resin as well, but plaster's much cheaper. And the way it takes paint, you'll see what I mean when I come to that bit. The way it takes paint is quite amazing. And that's what makes my rocks so realistic, is a combination of these moulds and the fact that I'm just using plaster with it. A little dribble left. I'm not going to need all of these, but let's put a bit in that one. That's going to make quite a shallow one. Okay, plaster, for those who've not used it before, cures fairly quickly. I'll probably be able to pop these out. I'll leave it an hour to be on the safe side, but it does cure quite quickly. It's a lot like using Aquacast, really. There we are. As you can see, I'm just using a little plastic spoon and a jug. This is an ordinary plastic jug. You can use, it's water-based, so you can use actually anything to mix your plaster in. But I find these little plastic jugs quite good because I can just go and bash it on the side of the bin outside and all the plaster falls off. Really quite a handy little trick. Okay, so that is going to sit there doing nothing now for a bit. I'll leave the camera on both though, so you can see what's going on. Because you should see that go matte, and that's when you know when it's drying. Now, this one then. What we're doing here is we're going to put our water blobs in, but this time we're having a pond, aren't we? So that's going to be my pond. It'll end up bigger than that. But you can see how viscous this resin is. It doesn't come out of the bottle too easily. And that viscosity, like I said earlier, it does mean it domes up really well. So that is really what I bought this resin for. But if I may humbly suggest, if you're going to do a lot of raindrop stuff, there you go, there's our pond shape. If you can do a lot of raindrop stuff, or doming jewellery of course, then try this one. It's from J Diction. They do a low viscosity one as well, which is brilliant for jewellery. Sometimes you need it to be runnier. And they do the standard one too. Now, when I've done this before, I think when most of us have done this before, we've used chameleon flakes or powder or just mica powder on the back. In this case, I'm going to be using model railway scenery stuff. It's still going to end up a flat thing, slightly inspired by the items I made for Claire's Crafty Corner's collaboration at Easter. Sorry if my hands are getting in the way. I'm trying to squeeze this bottle harder so it comes out quicker. This is using quite a lot of UV resin, as you can see. Pop the top on. Now, I've got a silicone brush as well handy. These are really good for moving your silicone around, because your resin around, because obviously to get it off the brush you can either just wipe it off, or if you kind of forget about it and let it cure, it just snaps straight off. You can see there's a few little bubbles in here. I don't really care if I end up with bubbles, it's a pond after all. And anyway, this is the initial layer. I'm just going to grab myself a wipe. Still using Wonder Wipes, by the way. Somebody suggested recently the unscented baby wipes. I might try those at some point, but I'm getting on well with the Wonder Wipes still. Now, the fish. These need to go upside down, because like when we do a normal coaster, I am working upside down here. So let's have one of those. And that, I believe, what is that one? Is that a... don't know which sort that is. I know the names of some of them and I can't remember all of them. I generally remember the ones I've got in my pond. I haven't got one of those. Oops. If anyone wants any of these little fish, just order as normal through my eBay shop for now, please. I am going to have a fish making session again at some point, because since that last video I've had a lot of requests, so bear with me, I'll get them to you as soon as I can. I think this is an Utsuri Mono. I think I am going to put a big fish in this one. Don't know quite what depth I'm going to manage to work to, but I think that'll be okay. There. Slightly tilted to one side. I'm going to actually give that a quick zap just with my little UV lamp, just to try and get him to stay upright. I do want him to sit flat really. There we go, that's thickened that enough to do it. Okay, that's enough fish, I think. I push that one down a little. It started to cure. No, I'll leave them as they are. They have started to cure. That lamp's very powerful. Right, let's give it a proper cure with the new lamp. So as you can see, brand new, just taking the cable off. I'm going to try not to get this one covered in resin. There's its little legs, look. It's a giant version of the little one that comes with the UV starter kit. Now, I do like Let's Resin's UV starter kit. It comes with really everything you need. There's a little mat with it. Let's give it a good 2 minutes blast. Yeah, it comes with a little mat and everything, and one of these and 2 bottles of the resin. It's a really good kit. So if you've not done ultraviolet curing resin before, can I suggest you look that one up? I'll put the link for you below. So while this is curing, I'll introduce you to the rest of the stuff we're going to be using. Now, as we're using model railway scenery materials, we have gravel. Just push the rest of the little fish out of the way at the back here. There we go. We have gravel. Then we need greenery, don't we? And I've got some flock, as we call it. Green stuff, basically. We've got different sorts of green stuff. There's a slightly different colour one, and I've got some darker as well. We'll have a bit of floral stuff in there too. What colours should we have? I'm trying to think of something nice and bright that's going to show up against the rest of the greenery. That's a bit dark. Excuse me while I talk to myself. This one, that's a mix I've made with green stuff in it too. So as you can see, we're getting a collection. Sorry, I'm going out of screen with these a bit because I'm stacking them all up. And I think also we will put some bushes and things in amongst it too. Some of these probably won't really come into play until we get onto the next layer. And this one. But yeah, I've got some bushes as well. Okay, that's probably done enough actually now, so let's put that to one side. Thumbs up for that so far. That's cured really well. What I'll do once I've put the last layer on is I'll turn the mould over and cure from the other side as well. So what I need to do though first is finish putting my pond in. So what we're going to do is put another layer over, because as you can probably see, the fish is still stood proud from the resin. So I need to dome this up really quite deep. There we go. And what we're going to want to do is have this one look like, it's going to be a very stylised pond. So the bottom of the water is going to be not like I would normally have it really. I'd normally have lots of gravel, lots of greenery, black in the centre to create a depth, all that sort of thing. I'm going to need to create quite a lot more depth here looking at it, so let's get the lamp on the go again. There we are. I'm liking this so far. It's nice and big, and you can see what's going on under it, which is often a problem with nail art ones. So I'm going to put one more layer of this on, and then we'll start putting some colours in. Don't know if you can see to the side here, this is starting to separate. I probably did put a bit too much water in it, so it's going to take longer than usual to cure. So yes, we're going to need some colours here. Because it's going to be stylised, I will be adding a little bit of shimmer and so on though. Not going to make it completely boring. That'll probably do. And I'm still building it up, as you can see. I'm going to have like a deep patch in the middle. I'm just wanting to make sure the fish look like they're in the water rather than sitting on it, sitting on the top or the bottom. It doesn't matter if one of them's sitting on the bottom, a bit fish do that. But on the whole, I want them to be, you know, above the surface of the floor of the pond. What's happening is I'm creating layers here. I don't know if you can see, oh, there's a bit escape there, but I'm building this up so we should have a deeper area in the middle. If you've ever seen a preformed plastic pond, you know what I mean. They don't, I mean, you can get completely flat bottom square ones, but a lot of them are kind of shaped and then you get a deeper patch and so on. Okay, I'm back. I've got some colours together and I'm probably going to blind you here. Maybe not. I just want to give this a blast from the back. Now don't forget what we're doing here is straight onto a silicone mould. It would actually feasibly lift off. In fact, it's trying to already. So we need to make sure it stays stuck down. But if you suddenly think, well, I wish I'd put it somewhere else or made it bigger or whatever you were going to do, it's fine because you can move it. It'll just come off and you can move it. Right, that should have done it, I would think. It only needed a quick blast because obviously we've been giving it some serious, there we go, ultraviolet from this side. Right, just need to make sure that it's still firmly down on the mould, which it's not, it's bent, which is really helpful, isn't it? There we are, now it is. So what we're going to do then, as I said, we're going to try and give some depth to the centre area. I've got a makeup brush, perfectly ordinary makeup brush, and I'm going to start with some black in the middle. And you'll see this is kind of what I do with the model railway one as well. It's just it will be using black gravels and things. And this isn't sticking as well as I hoped it would. This is a bit of an experiment, of course. Yeah, I thought it would stick better than that. It's funny, isn't it? I always moan about UV resins curing sticky. They don't always, and the times I want them to dry sticky, they don't. Annoying. Anyway, that should be enough to give it some depth. It is partially sticking. Now I've got some on the rest of the mould, so I'll clean that up before I go too much further. And I'm going to add a bit of colour around the edges because this is, as I said, going to be quite a stylised sort of pond. It's not... Yeah, you can see this lifting off, look. Actually, you know what? Let's lift it off. We can give it a clean, can't we then? That's much easier. There, and just stick it back down firmly to the mould. Get that. Make sure that's sealed down before I put the rest on, I will. Well, before I put the rest of the resin in. Right, yes, so it doesn't have to be too, you know, accurate. This is going to be like a cartoon fantasy pond, I suppose, a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of this purpley blue around the edges. Which, if that runs onto the silicone a bit, it doesn't matter too much. Isn't that funny? Because that one's sticking really well. The other one didn't. What I'm going to do, I think, is turn my heat mat on because that will make this go soft and therefore it will bend and stick back onto our mould. There we go. So we should have a darker area in the middle. Right, put those to one side, clean up again. And yeah, I'll put the heat mat on for a minute. But don't use heat under UV resin while it's curing. Whatever you do, it boils and it goes all silly. Yeah, this is leading me to believe I could have done this entirely separately if I'd wanted. Right, I'm going to spray it with some alcohol as well because that'll help to create a seal. Then we're going to press it down. Now once that's heated up and it's stuck down, it's softened so that I can make sure it's regained its seal, we're going to put round it some gravel. So let's get my first little box of scatters out. What I'm going to do is just put them kind of round the edge of the pond like this. So this end we're going to have a kind of, this end will be a kind of a beach effect. This end is just kind of a, you know, just a bit of a detail. So that's that size of gravel. Now what I have got is some really fine gravel as well. Here it is. It's more like a sand almost, but not quite. I'm going to put some of that in as well. So that'll go in between the bigger stones. And just soften it a little bit. Let's have a bit around the edge too. Not all the way around. We don't want it all the way around. Let's have a little patch over here too. I just plaster, still drying. You can see why that one takes longer, can't you? Now we're going to want some greenery. Now the first thing I want to put in, because I want to make sure it's seen, is some of the flowery one. This is a mixture of Flower Soft and various model railway scatters that I mixed up myself really. So let's have a bit over there and a bit over here. Don't forget what's against the silicone mould is what you're going to see first. Get some of this off my hands. Gets messy this. You should see the mess after a model railway exhibition. And they're packing all the layouts away. Right, now this one is quite a bright green. Looks like it's been made from sawdust or something. Can't even remember where this one came from. But what I want to do is kind of vary it a bit as we go around. I want it all the same shade of green. Because only really posh lawns are the same shade of green all over, aren't they? So that's that. And I'm going to put in a few bits of bushiness. I think these are mostly Javis pieces. You get big bags of it. Well, you can get whopping big tubs of it if you're doing a big layout. It's just to give it a bit of texture. Now obviously on a layout those bits will stand up and, you know, you'll have quite a bit of funky coloured going on there. You get like a proper bush effect. With these, because it's all going to be encapsulated within the resin, you won't get quite so much of the, yeah, it won't look so much like a bush, but I'm just trying to give it a bit of texture so it's not all the same. If any of it stands up out of the resin, I can just squish it down a bit afterwards. Okay, so that's that. Next. Got lots of different shades of green. That's what you can hear going on in the background. Anybody who's done model railways will know what I mean. You end up with quite a lot of different shades of green. This is like a woodland floor scatter type thing. I thought we might have a little bit of this as well. Maybe near to the pond we have a bit that looks a bit like it's a bit muddy. Yeah, why not? Just giving it a bit of variety again. And then this is going to be a long video, isn't it? Let's have a bit of this. This is reindeer moss. It stinks. I've not tried it in resin before. Well, not buried in resin before. When I say it stinks, it really does. It's horrible pongy stuff. But it makes really good bushes. As you can see, it looks almost like a bush already, doesn't it? So let's have a little bit of that in amongst it. Now, a lot of this you're not going to see because it'll be the other side. I'm being mindful of that. Then I think we'll probably be on to my final scatter. Now my final scatter, that's what they call it. I call them sprinkles. It makes the model railway people laugh. But my final scatter is this one. I use this mix because it's mixed up from all the bits I've had left over from previous tubs. So you end up with this kind of random mix that's got a bit of everything in it. But it can look quite natural. So we're going to fill it all in with this. And at this stage we can go over the back of the whole lot. So that's what I'm going to do. Claire, I hope you're enjoying this. Give me a thumbs up. Tell me if you think I've done anything horribly wrong. So, the closest I've come to doing this before was the Easter collaboration piece. And this is all completely upside down to what I normally do, so God knows what it's going to look like. And as usual, I'm making a mess. So all this leaves then is to put the resin on the top. Now I'm going to do something a bit weird here, in that I'm going to mix up some deep pour resin. This is definitely not deep. It's going to take a long time to cure, but this will give this time to catch up a bit. Now the reason I'm doing deep pour resin is because it's thinner. So I want to make sure it can get all the way through to the silicone. I want it to really soak through. So I think if it takes longer to cure, that's probably no bad thing. So the one I'm using is from Arc. I don't know if you can still see the label on that. It's I get it from eBay and I will share the link with you. Now, because it's going to be thinner, yes, it's going to take a lot longer to dry. It's going to be, it'll be a couple of days. It won't like, it doesn't heat up, you see. It won't like being on this thinner mould at all. But I do want to make sure it soaks through and doesn't trap bubbles. I think there's going to be bubbles underneath the pond anyway, because it's been too big an area to do with the UV and to retain its adhesion to the mould. I will see if I can find a better way of doing that at some point. But I think it'll work anyway. So I'll fast forward this bit while I just keep stirring. I just want to make sure it's thoroughly stirred, and I am pretty sure I'm going to need to mix up another batch. So what I've done is I've just added a little bit of black. It'll make the back of it go darker. I'm not too worried if it's completely opaque or not, although that's a Vista colour, so it may well be. Just to make sure that the greenery stands out, and if the resin does push the greenery off the back of the pond, it might dislodge some of the mica powder too. So I thought if I did it like this, then it will at least have a dark background to it. Now the model railway scenery stuff mostly is based on materials like sawdust. Some, believe it or not, it's even tea leaves. I'll put you some links for some of this stuff. There's Woodland Scenics, there's Javis, there's probably some Penduke model stuff in amongst this mix as well. there's all sorts, but I'll give you some links so you can have a look and see if you can get some ideas from what the materials they use if you want to do this sort of thing. The other one I've been using a lot lately is Serious Play and Green Stuff World. Yeah, I'm going to have to mix another lot up. Their products are for war gaming, and you know, they work for model railway scenery and all sorts. Scale modelling basically. Right, I'm back. Now, the resin is all curing over here. Like I said, it's going to take probably a couple of days for that to cure because I've used that type of resin. Now, thought I'd show you the unmolding of these parts for this pond. Now, because I poured it really quite thin and probably haven't left it long enough to cure, you know what I'm like, then these are probably going to break as I get them out, but that's fine because actually I want them to do that. They're quite hard to demold. This is rubber, not nice soft thin silicone, so they are quite hard to demold. What you can do though is get the moulds warm first, and of course that softens it up a bit, but anyway, there we go. So I can just give that a rinse and clean that out later. So what I've got, let me get the loose little bits off here. Have a little bit of a clean up. What we've got then is some what's going to be the rocks around the sides of the pool. And this one will probably be a bit of a bigger pool, I don't know. But what we need to do is place them where we want them first. That's going to be quite a sheer rock, that one. I might do this one quite to one side as well. That's a fairly sheer rock as well. So let's try and make that into... Ah, I see, that's the end of that one. Yeah, let's try to make that into a bit where we're going to have like a bit of a hillside. Should we have a hillside? Fancy a hillside. Actually, no, let's go back a bit. Going to make like a rockery, I think. Maybe, don't know, just bushes. Really, plan these things before you start talking, Trace. Always been that way, I'm afraid. Yeah, now I'm going to make a few more. And we can make that a little bit bigger. Actually though, what I think I might do, yeah, I've got a spare one over here. This is one I made for something else. You can see the way the paint takes to it. Yeah, there we go. If I do it that way around, that's it. There we go, sorted. And I think I want... So a lot of this is the trick is in the lining up your rocks, how you want them. It looks a bit odd at the moment, but what I will be doing is filling in these gaps with like bushes and things. Oh, there you go. That's big enough. That'll be big enough for my little koi, won't it? So what we need to do now is fill the whole thing with some plaster. Now I've mixed some more up, it's quite thin because I want it to spread well. Now I'm going to go all around the edges first, because this is going to be the base. This is like a little diorama really, isn't it? Or what, you know, you could call, model railway people call some of the things I make plants, because you just plant them in the middle of your layout. Now what you'll see is this is going up to the back of the plaster and isn't coming in between. I actually do want a bit in the middle though, to give it a base. Whoops. So, well, I was a bit gone through anyway now. That bit's floated. That's fine. But I do just want it quite shallow in the base here, so I don't necessarily need too much coming through. What I might do is let that set up a little bit before I put the bit in the middle. Let's pour a bit more in quite carefully. Now, the reason I mixed it quite thin was because I do want it to flow, and also the plaster that's already in there, the little rocks, will absorb quite a lot of the moisture out of it as it hits them. What you must be careful to do is not to drip onto the plaster of those existing rocks, and that is simply because the way the paint takes to plaster is really weird. It kind of absorbs in and creates this realistic surface, but it won't do that if you've poured plaster onto it. It only does it if it's come out the mould that way. It's really hard to explain. You'll see what I mean when we get to painting the rocks. Okay, I've got some water. Now, the idea is to put in just touches of colours. Excuse me, just knocking things everywhere. Just a touch of colour, and so that you're not really creating black, just black rocks. So as you can see, I've got like a pale golden colour here, and I'm just going to dab it in so that we've got, and don't worry if it goes all over this because this is going to disappear anyway. But yeah, just dabbing it in so we've got a little bit of a tint of something to the rocks. And you can probably see here how the paint is behaving differently on the rocks to what it is on the plaster base. So there's just a little, let me zoom this in actually, I don't know if you can see this okay. Let's zoom it onto the, there we go, that's zoomed you on the rocks particularly. There. Now don't worry about what's going on around the sides here. Doesn't matter, because that's all going to disappear into green. I'm now mixing up a little bit of a sludgy brown colour. Here it is. Again, I want it nice and diluted. This is just acrylic paint. They're just colours that I managed to get about right previously, and so I thought, oh, I'll pop some of those in a pot. So again, I'm just adding a bit of these colours to bits of these rocks. Now, the longer you leave these rocks, pour the rest in the middle. The longer you leave these rocks before you do this, so the drier they are, it has an impact on the way the paint disappears into the nooks and crannies. So it's a bit trial and error, and I must admit every time I do it, it's different, which is slightly annoying. But there we are. So now I'm going to go in with the black last. Probably should let this dry first though, so I'm going to go in with the black in the centre first, which I haven't diluted very much. Now I'm going to just splodge this around because this is going to be the base of our pond. So we don't want it to be too even, we want it to just be nice and splodgy. So that's it for now. Can brush the rest of this off onto here, it doesn't matter. That's going to have all the greenery on it anyway, so I'm just cleaning my brush off. Use up the last bit. So there we are. I'm just going to let this dry now, and then we'll come back and we'll put some black in on the rocks. But what we've done with those colours, it just saves it all ending up as like just black. It makes it look a little bit more natural. So I shall see you again in a bit. Right, back for the next coat. I'm not sure whether I've mixed this up a bit too thin. This is just black acrylic again, but I might have mixed it a bit too thin. So I've got bit of the paint standing by just in case. Oh, it's looking pretty good. Trouble is I need to match that rock there, don't I? I could always lighten that rock, I suppose. Wouldn't be too difficult. But I'm just adding a bit more of the black. Now can you see how that's going kind of into the nooks and crannies? Well, actually I'll mix quite a bit up because I think I'm going to go into the grass areas as well. I've actually run out of the black in the little bottle, so I'll be mixing this as we go. And it is just black acrylic. It's just it can get little bits in it. So I like to have it ready mixed up in those little bottles, so it's not so difficult to dilute. But I'll be using a lot of the same stuff that we did previously. Lots of the green bits and pieces. First thing we're going to need though is some PVA glue. Right, PVA into a little pot. Going to need quite a bit. And the way I apply this, because it's going to go around this grass area, so the way I apply it will be just with a brush, a biggish old soft brush here. Now, wherever I put this, we're going to end up with some greenery. Because this is being done while it's still in the mould, which I'm doing just in case the plaster's a bit thin still, it's going to end up probably with a white or a slightly mucky white edge to it. So what I shall be doing about that is just tinting it in with some paint afterwards. Not a problem. So as you can see, I'm putting this on quite thick, and I'm getting some of it on the rocks as well. I think this area here is going to be all bushes actually, so let's put some plenty on there. And we said we'd have bushes over here, didn't we? Now, because I'm going to be filling up in the middle with resin, I need to make sure I've got some of the PVA into these little nooks and crannies between the rocks. And now, don't forget, this plaster is going to dry this resin really, this PVA really quickly. Any water-based glue will do for this. Well, any glue, frankly, except super glue, as long as it'll absorb onto the finished piece. Now, be warned, this is going to look a right mess. What I do is, because it will shake off the surplus afterwards, but what I'm going to do is put plenty of the bush type stuff on first. Then we'll add in things like some flowers and so on, and then I will be scattering my bog standard green mix over the top, but it will be, you know, a lot of it will be dusted off afterwards, and I might put some more of this greenery on afterwards as well. You can keep adding to it because we're not sealing it all in with resin. What will be left till last is the pond, because this way I won't keep getting green stuff where I don't want it. Okay, so this is all dried off now. I've just sprayed it with hairspray, so if it looks a bit sticky, that's why. I dusted off the surplus, and then, yeah, I've sprayed it with hairspray. I've put on a bit more greenery here and there. You can see we've got some quite big bushy bits here. Next bit will be to let that dry, the hairspray dry. That just basically stops it molting everywhere. And then we're going to look at maybe some trees. Now, I can see these look really bright green under this light. They're a bit more natural looking under normal light. So, you know, when it's all finished, I will show you it under normal light anyway. But there we go. So that'll be our next step. So another, I don't know, hour to let that dry off. Right, it's drying off quite nicely now. So I'm going to try cutting these trees down. Now, some of them have this spike on the bottom, And that's because, of course, if it was going into a model railway layout, you would spike it in, but we're not going to be able to use that spike. So the challenge here is to make it stay upright where we do want it, which I think is going to be there. But let's cut the rest of them down too. So I've got a little conifer here. Now a lot of these cut quite easily. These are very cheap ones from China or something. You can get beautiful handmade ones. There's a lady called who trades as Scenics, which is spelled C-E-N-Y-X, I think, something like that. And a firm called the Little Tree Company, who do some really realistic ones. In fact, I'm going to show you one. Let me have a look. I'm not going to use this today, but that is a T-scale willow tree from the Little Tree Company. And as you can see, I mean, the prices might have gone up a little bit since then. I've had this a while. Oh no, it's the Model Tree Shop, that's it, sorry. You can see how beautiful that is. So you can get some much more realistic ones. For the purposes of demonstrating this though, I'm just using the ones that I get in bulk cheap from China. Now I thought we'd have a red one. Yeah, if there were British alternatives, then I do try to use them as well. A lot of these products are very much made in Britain, but some it's not so simple to get. Let's face it, we don't tend to do the cheap naff versions of things over here. And these trees are, I'm going to be honest, these trees are cheap naff trees. Now I'm trying to prop this little tree up while that glue dries. This is always the tricky bit. Right, as I said, this one has been left behind by this one because basically this was just waiting for it to cure game. Now, just to make sure that the ultraviolet has cured from this side fully before I go turning it out of the mould, I'm just going to put my little lamp on it just for a second. And while that's doing, I'm just going to talk about what's going on with this one. This one, as you can see, all the trees are in now. This one doesn't really want to stay upright, so I've put a bit more glue around it. I might end up building up a little bit more of the greenery around it. When you use these trees on proper model railway layouts, usually you've got like a polystyrene or something base underneath that you can stab them into, which particularly for the taller trees you need that. Now obviously I haven't got that here because this is straight onto just plaster. So I might have to build up a bit more around the base of it to make sure that tree stays standing upright. But anyway, other than that, that is ready for the pond to go in. However, in the meantime, back in resin land, this did take, in the end, only just over 24 hours to cure, assuming it has cured properly, which is surprising because it was the deep pour resin, if you remember. However, I have left it another half a day to be on the safe side, and I've been out most of the day anyway, so it should be well cured by now. As you can see, some of the greenery's floated up to the surface and some of it's a bit lumpy bumpy. I can sand that off or put a coat over the back or something, not a problem. Now this is the exciting bit. We want to see if my big bubble has worked. And you know what? It hasn't. And this is why I was trying to cure it more from the other side, although it's only not worked in patches, which is really odd. But it's worked well enough. I'm actually not displeased with that. All I'm saying about it not working is, I don't know if you can see, but it's still sticky around the edges. I'll get the UV on that. But the bubble effect has definitely worked in itself. Isn't that odd? It's just around the edges. And you can see all the greenery has worked. Got the gravel in here. The 3D effect on the pond has worked really well. So all I'm going to do is leave my UV lamp over that so that cures up. but I'm going to let it sit for a little bit first to see if that sort of smooths itself out. But otherwise, other than that bit around the edges not having cured quite so properly, or at all strangely, that must be where I've got thicker stuff on the back. So other than that, the bubble effect in there, the big raindrop effect, I think that's worked really well. So I might have another go at that at some point. So there we are. I'll let that sit for a bit, put my UV light over it, and job's a good one. And then we'll revisit this one when you know, obviously when that tree's settled down. So there we go. So here we go, the little tree is now stuck where it's supposed to be. Bushes are all stuck down, but the little tree is doing its thing. What we need to do now is that pond. So I'll just get this camera back into its holder and we'll make a start on the pond. So the first stage with the pond then is to get some depth into the bottom. We've already got that dark coloured in there, but it does need to be darker. So let's get some, what should we have? I've got some stuff that they sell as tarmac for model railways. And as you can see, some very dark, some a bit lighter. I think what I'm going to do is go for the lighter one, because I just know that that does go black when you get the resin on it. And let's put in a bit of that darker one as well. What we're trying to do is create a realistic looking bottom to this pond. And the stone is trying to match up the colour of the stones. I don't think I'm going to get it quite right, but let's have a little bit of this grey. This is actually model railway ballast. It's the medium grey one. What else shall we have? Let's have a little bit of this very fine gravel. Again, these colours aren't matching up to the rocks around it terribly well. If you want to look at really realistic, you want to match these rocks kind of into your stones a bit, because then it looks like the gravel has broken away from the stones. And this is what I tend to do. I tend to just keep playing at it until I've got an effect I want. I've got some more gravel here. Again, I'm going to pick out some of the finer stuff, maybe go like that a little bit. Let's have a little bit over there. But again, I'm not matching up the colours as well as I try to when I'm doing these to sell. That will probably give us the effect that we need. I'm just having a look to see if there's anything else. Maybe a little bit of, this is like a greenish colour. Let's have a little bit of that, just to blend the stones in. So that's a little bit of this. Oh, no, I've got some very dark green here. This is extremely dark, as you, well, actually the camera's making it lighter because it's I've got my light on quite bright. But the idea is to sort of give a bit of a texture to the bottom of the pond. Next job will be to get my gloves on, and we'll get start getting some resin into there, because I'm going to put a first layer which I'll tint very slightly with black. Right, so I am mixing up the resin, and I'm still using the Vista 1 at the moment. I'm finding it very good. I might try Vista Turbo next though, because that cures quicker. But Vista 1 I went for simply because looking at the ingredients, it doesn't seem to be quite as high in the chemicals that can cause allergic reactions. And being Vista 1, it's called that because it's a 1-to-1 mix, which for those who are hard of maths like me, makes life a lot easier. So I'm trying it and I'm finding it very good, and lo and behold, I am not getting allergy reactions. The only thing I'm finding is that it is quite thick. So as you can see, I've just flashed it with my lamp, the heat lamp torch thingy, to try to warm it up a little bit. And what you can do is put the part A, is it? Yeah, it's the part A that's really thick. You could put it in a bowl of warm water for half an hour, I suppose, first. I've seen people warming their resins first, so you could do that. But yeah, I'm finding it a little bit thick. I have got my heat mat on now. It shouldn't do any harm to the little scene now because all the plaster's dry and everything. I thought I'd turn my heat mat on, just give this a little warm through. So while I'm stirring it, I'm just going to put I don't even want a drop, okay? Just the tiniest touch of pigment. There we go, literally wiped a little bit off the top of the bottle. It's the Vista pigment that I'm using again here. I've only got the black in the Vista range, and I'm finding it's incredibly strong pigment. Very, very good. So as you can see, I've only put the tiniest little tint in there. I might put just a tiny little bit more, because all I'm trying to do is give it a little bit of a tint in that base layer, just to, there, that's it, just to help that feeling of depth. Right, so I'm going to slow down my stirring a bit now, let the bubbles start to dissipate a little bit. There we go, that should do. Let's move it back into the middle. So I'm just going to give this another quick flash with my torch, trying not to set fire to my hand or melt the pot. And we're just going to pour it in. And that is done for that first layer. I'm going to let it cure. This is why my ponds take so long to make and why they're not cheap to buy, because I do it in layers. Now, a really big pond with a lot of depth can take up to 10 layers. But I like to try to get it so that the fish aren't quite on the bottom, they're not on the top either, and get a bit of greenery in between those layers. So it looks like there's pondweed and things in there. Okay, time for the big reveal. First of all, let's have a look at the model railway scenery type 1. And as you can see, I've got my little fish, they're underwater, there's stuff in the water. It's nice and shiny. The only thing I haven't done is got it out of the mould. Now this is probably going to make an almighty mess. But there we go, as simple as that. And I have a mould to wash. Now, as you can see around the edges, it's got a little bit of white still, and you know, that's nothing I can't tidy up afterwards. I'm just going to go around it with a little bit of dark grey paint. And then I shall probably touch in a little bit more with the greenery and give it another spray with hairspray to make sure all this is firmly, you know, not going to go molting. But there we are. I hope you like it. I'll do some proper photos in a little while to go at the end of the video, as usual. Now, this is coming up is the one that Claire from Claire's Crafty Corner suggested, having seen my Easter project and having seen my pond in my previous video, as you remember. So I'm going to start upside down. That's what the back dried like. Yes, it's a bit lumpy bumpy. I'm going to need to do a little bit of sanding or just put some little rubber feet on it. I think I might just do that. Are you ready for the other side? There we are. I hope you like it, especially Claire. I hope you like it, as this was your idea. So as you can see, all the gravel and the greenery has come through, and look at the depth on the pond there, which of course has given me another idea. So I can feel another video coming on, and then I think it really is time to put the raindrop effect to bed. I've had enough of it by then. But yeah, two completely different takes on doing a pond in a grassy area. Thought you'd like them. Thanks everyone who's subscribed to my channel. Anyone who hasn't, feel free to do so. The links are down below as usual. And of course, if you click the little bell as well, it'll remind you whenever I've got a video coming out, so that you can be kept well informed. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and thank you for your support. And I'll see you for the next one. Bye.